Thanks, Caitlin. You were about to talk about upgrades. So hello, everyone, and welcome to the presentation. We're going to spend the next 45 or 50 minutes going through Microsoft Dynamics GP, or what used to be called Great Plains back in the day. This is the current version of the product, so GP 2018 was released back the first part of November of 2017, so about 6 months or a little more ago. And obviously we're not going to look at everything in the software. We don't have time to look at every module, but some of the highlights of what Dynamics GP is about. Before we actually get over to the software though, I did want to at least put up on the screen the operating system requirements. So for those people that might be thinking about using the software, or I do have one slide if you are a current Dynamics GP user. On an older version, I do have one slide at the end here that talks about how you get there. So we realize that some of the people on the call might actually be existing users and thinking about upgrading, and so I did include that. But basically you need a current version of Windows software, and so Windows 7, 8, 8.1 or 10 required to actually use the software on your desktop. On the server side, this can be virtualized, so a lot of people run this in a virtual environment. So Microsoft supports, of course, their own Hyper-V product, but it really runs any virtualized software on the server side that's out there. So I don't think we've ever seen one that it doesn't work on. Current version of Microsoft Office up there in the top left, Office 2013, 16 are certainly fine. That doesn't mean that it won't run on an older version of Office, but just some of the functionality and integration with Word and Excel may not work exactly right if you get a too old version there that you're trying to hold on to. Server side, the SQL database, which is required here. So this is sits on top of Microsoft SQL. Again, something current, SQL 2014, SQL 2016, or the brand new SQL 2017 are supported. And you can see the Windows Server operating systems over there on the right, lower part of the screen there. So Server 2012, 2016. Generally anything that Microsoft has that they're supporting is usually supported with Dynamics GP. So if you do happen to be an existing GP customer or user and you're thinking of upgrading, if you're on 2013 or older, there's not a direct path. That doesn't mean you can't get there. If you're on GP 2015 or 2016, you can go directly from those versions to 2018. If you happen to be on 2013 or GP 2010 or GP 10 or something older than that, we can get you there. It just takes a couple of steps or hops, so to speak, to actually get you up to 2018. But if you happen to be an existing GP user, you can see the version numbers that are supported to upgrade from GP 2015 and 2016 down there. So if you have questions, bring those up at the end, and I'm certainly happy to answer those and talk about how that works. So with that, I want to close out the slides altogether, and we'll spend the rest of the time in Microsoft Dynamics GP. And so let me bring that up onto your screen here. And it's being a little resistant. It wants to come over. There it is. So, okay, you should be able to see it now. So this is the software, and lots of things happening here on kind of your home page. I've got a fairly busy home page, but that's really by choice. And so when you log in, you do land on this kind of home screen, so to speak. And this is all customizable by user. So some of us will do different jobs in the organization. We'll have access to different parts of the system and be running different reports and going into different data entry windows and inquiry windows and so forth. And so this is all personalized by user. These tiles that you see here, kind of these areas to the screen, these are drag and drop, and so you don't have to go with what you see here on mine, and it's very easy to decide what you want on your home page, really just with the click of a button here, and you can turn things on and turn things off and kind of change the layout of the screen and personalize it so that it looks and acts the way that you want it to. So a couple of things that I do want to call your attention to here. The top left, the to-do area, which you'll also see has a task list and a workflow task, which we'll revisit here in a minute or two. This reminders area is really the software kind of using some of its own intelligence based on our parameters, of course. And so you see some things here that if I hover over, actually are links into the system. And so let's just pick on the top one here. There's customers over the credit limit. It looks like there's 7 of those. And so if I click on that, that opens our little query tool called SmartList. And I noticed my icons all have gears on them for some reason. That happened while I was out to lunch, oddly enough, so they don't normally look like that. I don't know if my machine did a quick little update or something. Actually, let me just close this and reopen it. So I didn't notice that when Caitlin and I were chatting before the session. So it'll work just fine, but I would rather you see the actual labels of what's happening instead of the little gears. So 1 or 2 little gears is okay, but if every icon looks like that, that's going to be that's going to wear out its welcome there. So I'm just relaunching here on another monitor. But Dynamics GP is, I should mention, can be installed locally on your own servers. So if you have a SQL server that you're using for something else, we can install Dynamics GP on that in your server room down the hall, so to speak. It can be hosted if you have a data center that you work with today and have a relationship with. Dynamics GP is very easily hosted at a public data center or private data center. If you don't have a data center, but you do want it kind of turned on in the cloud format, Microsoft will host that for you. And so they have, of course, their own cloud called Microsoft Azure or Azure, depending on who you ask. And Dynamics GP sits inside of their data center very nice as well. And so lots of options. They don't really care where you install the software, and so it is cloud-based. It is on-premise based if you prefer that. Okay, so we're back, and you see now that I don't have the gears anymore. I have the actual icons, so which is much more interesting. And so here's my customers that were over their credit limit, and the little reminder up here said I have 7, and sure enough, when I open the SmartList window here, I do. And so this is good. This is really the software based on my setup telling me what's happening. And so in the old days, which in technology is about 5 years ago, but really back in the day, 10, 20 years ago, if you wanted to know information like this, you had to go run a report or look at an inquiry window or something in the system. The software wouldn't really tell you what's happening under the hood. And so today, with current versions of the software, we really get the software to kind of do some of that thinking for us and provide us the data. And if it's important enough, we can put that little plug-in onto our home page, and so we can have a little dashboard, so to speak, of things that are happening here kind of behind the scenes, so we don't have to go look and see, gee, I wonder if somebody's over their credit limit today. That would be a complete waste of time, and so we get the system to do that for us. And here is just a simple little list of credit limits and customer balances, and we can see, in fact, that yes, all these balances are definitely over the pre-established limit. Now, why that happened or how that happened, that's a different situation. We can prevent that from happening in the system if you want to be real hard-lined about it, but I have mine set where I can continue to process transactions with just a warning saying, hey, you're over the credit limit, do you want to proceed? And of course I did to create this scenario. So this really helps us identify a situation. It doesn't really do anything to remedy the situation. It just tells us that it exists. So now really what I want to do is take some kind of action with this data. And what I'd like to do is send these guys a letter and tell them, either to make payments to bring it back down, or maybe I'm just going to go through and you know, I've checked all these, they're good customers. Obviously, I'm letting them charge more than I've set their pre-established limit, some of them quite a bit, like this Office Design here has a pretty low limit of 30,000, and I've got receivables here of up to 76, so I must feel like they're a pretty good credit risk and have been maybe a very good customer. So what I could do is notify them all, hey, good news, we're going to increase your credit limit since we're letting you exceed it anyway. So I'm going to use Microsoft Word to actually do that. So you'll see I've got a couple of options here because I'm in the customer area and it senses that. I could send a collection letter, so that's one approach to try to get some money, but I'm going to give them the good news and just send a customer letter. And what Dynamics GP will do is present the letter templates that are in the system for customers. So we have the same for vendors, we have the same for employees if we were using the employee system, whether it's payroll or HR. We have a number of payroll and human resource letters, vendor letters, and then customer letters. So all of these that you see are available out of the box, with one exception, is this adjustment to credit limit -new. That's, I took the Microsoft template, this one right below it, and I modified it, and I'll show you that modification. And if you use Microsoft Word at all, you can modify these templates in just literally a few minutes, and so it doesn't need to be anything that you really even have to learn. So so I'm going to use my modified template here, and the system says, okay, well, who should get this letter? Well, you know, maybe I just talk to these guys on the phone, and you know, they're gonna maybe send me a payment, or for whatever reason I've let them go over their limit, but I'm really not ready to actually adjust their limit, so I'm not going to send them the letter. So I'm going to request 4 letters here, and so I'll click next, and the system says, okay, well, how would you like those letters signed? And I've already got my name and title in there. And when I click finish, we're going to do a mail merge with the Dynamics GP accounting data into Microsoft Word. And here they are on my other screen. And so I'll get a letter for all 4 of those people that I had requested. And so you can probably quickly see the edit that I made to the out of the box template is I added the logo. And so that was the only thing that I did, is put the Dynamics GP logo up here. And so otherwise, this is standard stuff right out of Fargo, right, the way Microsoft built it. And so, of course, any of this can be changed up to your own liking. You could have unlimited letter templates. They send about 70 or so with the system, but most customers end up with, you know, 100 or maybe 200 or more. But so I'll have 1 letter for every customer that I ticked off when I did the merge, which was the 4 of them. Of course, once it's over into Word, you know, this is Microsoft Word, so anything you would normally do in Word, you can do to the letter templates. And so, you know, change fonts and text or whatever it might be. And of course, you could actually edit this letter. It's just using the data to produce the letter, but once it's in Word, if there's a letter or 2 that you want to put a personal note to this particular customer, in my example, you could actually, you know, further customize it. So pretty good integration with Microsoft Word using some of that accounting data. But the real kind of power of this SmartList is not just the customers over the credit limit, but if we take a peek kind of behind the scenes here, you'll see all the different kind of, if you want to think of it as modules of the system. So, you know, under financial, I have my accounting information, banking information, I've got fixed assets, I have payroll and HR installed, and inventory and project accounting, and purchasing, which is vendors and so forth. And so, you know, here's a SmartList with all my 1099 vendors, and you see all of these that are on the list here. Anything with an asterisk, Microsoft provides. If you see one that does not have the star behind it, well, that's one that I either built or modified. And so here's 1099 vendors that I should be issuing a tax form to at the end of the year, but I don't have their tax number. So I know it's only May, almost June, but and this is not going to be a problem until January, but sometimes people will do things like this just to kind of keep track of data. And of course, you could put a reminder up on your homepage real easy to have this display if it had any records at all. And so that's really kind of the power of this. Is it's a very simple query tool, but if you put a reminder on your homepage, then you don't have to go run the query. Dynamics GP can tell you when things are happening and kind of how things look. The last piece of this, if we just grab something with a little bit of data here, just kind of a dump of the accounting data. And so maybe I want to do something in Excel with some of this. And so I kind of build the query as close as I can get it. And when I say build the query, sometimes that sounds intimidating, but it's really not. It's a matter of going to the columns and deciding what it is that you might want in the window. And so just kind of picking those things from the list here. And so I won't have a whole lot of information here, but I'll just grab a couple of things. Some of those won't have much data. And yeah, maybe this one's kind of important, so I want to see this one right up here by the journal entry in this example. And so you'll see that very quickly the data is returned in the format that I want. And of course, I can save this so that I don't have to rebuild it or re-architect it every time. But if I get something that I want to further kind of refine a little bit and push over to Excel, I can just, kind of like the Word example, I can just hit the Excel button one time, and that takes everything in the SmartList window and opens up an Excel worksheet here for me to continue to work with. And so from here, I might want to, you know, kind of play around with some of the numbers and do some other things. I have my decimals set up here to 5 places, so most people don't do that, but you can see you can pull out a little bit more precision than just dollars and cents. Same idea as the Word templates is once you're in Excel, of course, you know, this is Microsoft Excel, so anything you would normally do in Excel, you have full access to. So we're going to look at some more Excel things throughout the next few minutes here, so that's not the only integration point that the software has. And so that's kind of the reminder area. When we have workflow tasks, so things that we should be concerned with, maybe we're the approver on a purchase requisition or whatever it might be, those are going to show up here under the workflow tasks, and I'll actually do one here in a few minutes with the requisition. The next area is the business analyzer, and this is yet another reporting tool. And I'm going to change my focus a little bit, just so you can see these a little better. And so you might be saying, well, there's really nothing to see there. Well, that's because I've got my system date set up here to 2027. And so what I need to do is change it from today up to where my data is. And so as soon as I do that, then it goes and finds the data and brings that back. So the business analyzer, or my KPI area, is really a set of a couple hundred charts and graphs and reports that Microsoft has built. We got the same rule here as the Word templates. We can edit anything they've done to our own liking. We can create unlimited of our own charts and graphs and key performance indicator, kind of metrics, if you will, and plug those in if we have a desire onto our homepage. And so some of these I do have more current data, and so you'll see the system is populating, but some of them will be set to 0 until I go change the date here. So, well, why would you want to do this? You know, if you can actually see the data. Well, if you're a Dynamics GP user, you might not have a lot of value for looking at cash and what it's doing. This is really designed for maybe the CFO or the CEO or business owner or leadership type folks, and you know, they might not want to necessarily see the cash balance right down to the penny, but most people could look at this chart and say that doesn't look right, so that's not the direction we want our cash going. And so that's the idea, is that the accounting folks don't have to give out all this information, and the boss keeps calling saying, well, what's the bank balance look like? And well, they could just go retrieve this themselves. Well, you might be saying, oh, I don't really want them to be a Dynamics GP user, and most of the time that's the case. And so those charts and graphs being plugged into my home page is one way to look at the data. A more popular way is to look at it through a browser. And so I happen to open Internet Explorer, but this will work with Safari and Chrome as well. And so if you have an iPhone or an Android device phone that runs the Chrome browser, you have the ability to see this information right on your telephone. And so here's the company we're working in today. And this is 100% out of the box stuff here. I have not added or even modified any of these. And so we're in the financial area. I've got a number of reports that I can run from my browser. The chart that I had on my screen is under the charts and KPIs area. And so I think it was this one that we're looking at. And so if I run this chart, you'll see I get the same thing for today as I did in the system. But if I change this up to where my data is and then rerun the report, I should get the same chart as what you're seeing inside of my software. Why? Because it's pulling from the same data at the same time. And so here you'll see whether I'm looking at it through the browser, on my telephone, on my iPad, laying on the beach somewhere, as long as I got an internet connection, I'm getting the same version of the facts here. So one version of the truth, we might call it. And so that's the real power of the charts and graphs and KPIs, is not running them in the system per se, but running them on your mobile device. And so you've got, I have just a few plugged in here, but you'll see on the left all of the out-of-the-box reports that are available. And of course, if you're using the payroll and HR system, you've got a number of things there, customer information and vendor information, lots of stuff around sales, lots of stuff around finance, so general ledger stuff, bank information, and so on. And so, but the same rule applies here. We can edit anything Microsoft has done, or we can create our own if we don't love what they've done. So, okay, the rest of this will go a little quicker. Moving down to the next tier here, the My Reports area. This is really for me as a user to bring those reports that I use on a regular basis right onto my home page, so I don't have to remember where was that report that I ran last month, and you're digging around through menus and running, 50 things to the screen before you find the right report, the certain report that you need. So once you find that you use something on a regular basis, you just put it on your home page, and with one click, you've got it. And so this is kind of a standard out-of-the-box report, kind of what you might say is an older style report. I call it a hardcore accounting report. So it's just numbers on paper. And I have mine set to go to the screen. It can go directly to the printer without you looking at it, or you can do both. But so here, this is an aging for my vendors. So my open AP here. And if I scroll down, of course, I can see total by vendor and then total for the company. But these kind of older style reports that don't have any drill downs to them, they all kind of look and feel the same way. You can send these out if you have a PDF creator. Typically, Adobe is the one that's supported. The free versions will work with most things in the system. We found Adobe works the best, but I always tell people try one of the free ones first because it's free. So, but I do have a PDF creator here installed, and so if I wanted to bundle this up into a PDF and send this out, it's very easy to do, to email away to someone. Of course, if I do decide after I look at it on the screen, if I wanted something on paper, I can send this to any printer, including a PDF printer driver that this computer has access to across the network. And so all the reports kind of work the same way, those style of reports. But that's the idea of this section. The quick links is kind of the same thing, but really designed for things that you work on a regular basis. So you print your own little, or create your own little menu of things that you spend your day with. And so I've got some other stuff up at the top, but I do have kind of a category called GP Product Tour. And so I might visit the Microsoft financial community on a regular basis. This is a public website that, well, it's public to Dynamics customers that you can go to and exchange ideas and see how other people are handling things. And it could be things in the system. It could just be general kind of business questions. And so these look like a lot of technical things here, but certainly don't have to be. Some CFOs will go out here and ask other CFOs around the country questions about things that they might be dealing with in their business. So that happened to be a website link. I can link other parts of the system, and that's more times than not what we see here. And so here, if maybe I manage cash for the company, this is a kind of a simple little cash flow system here where I can see what every day of the month looks like, where if I have money going out more than I have coming in, or more money coming in than going out, I can kind of see. And then of course my running cash balance. Well, you know, maybe I want to drill into some of these and see what's going on. So here's something on May 1st. What was that? 44,300. So I can drill down on that and I can see if there were any receivable collections. And of course, normally you would look into the future, not what was collected that day, although you could, but I can see if there's any open AR that was due on the 1st, doesn't look like it. Any accounts payable that needed to be paid? Nope, no vendors. So I must have had something else. Oh yes, so here was a line of credit that I expected to draw down on May 1st. And so, you know, I can kind of pre-populate this part of the system if I want to. And, you know, these wouldn't necessarily be transactions like a payable or a receivable in the software. And so we have a way to kind of just put other changes to cash for the cash flow projection here on things that might affect our bank account that are not customers paying us or us paying vendors. And it looks like on the 15th, I'm going to spend some of that line of credit and buy a piece of equipment. And so, well, that was 50,000, but you'll see that the cash really was only expected to increase 44,300. So that means I must have something else coming out. Well, I looked at my open AP and I didn't have anything, but when I look at work, and work just means it's sitting out there in a batch, not posted. And so here I have my April rent, which is sitting out there. That was due May 1st. Well, maybe this is May's rent, but $5,700. And so that is assumed that that's going to be posted, and then a check will have to be written. And so again, I'm kind of, even though it's technically May 31st today on the calendar, I'm looking at May of 2027. So that's why I'm calling these things kind of futuristic. And so the whole plan here is that it gives you a little way to project out cash based on what you think might happen and who owes you money and who you owe money to. And of course, this prints off a report, just kind of like our accounts payable aging there. This prints off a very similar report. If you wanted a hard copy of this or wanted to send this to someone, just to get something on paper, you have that ability as well. The software handles, of course, unlimited bank accounts. And so I've got a number of bank accounts set up here. When we reconcile those, most people today, I will say, they don't wait for the bank statement to come in the mail at the end of the month or first week of the next month. That's kind of an old school way of closing the month out. And if you do that, it's still okay. That works, but it is kind of a little bit of an archaic way is to wait for the bank to tell you what's happened. Most people go get their transactions every day or every couple of days or every Friday from the bank's website. They would download those into a file, and we actually have the ability to map that file into our reconciliation. And so you'll see just for a few seconds there, it said electronic reconcile, and I've got kind of a fake file out there with this fictitious bank. And based on what's in that file, the electronic reconcile procedure will go in and tick off those transactions that are in the file, meaning they've cleared my bank account. So most people using the software, and this would be true even if you use QuickBooks, most people reconcile frequently, not at the end of the month. So we have a lot of clients, they reconcile every day. That's part of someone's job, is bank reconciliation every single day, Monday through Friday. Some people reconcile once a week. Not too many people wait for the statement to come in the mail and sit down for a day and try to manually tick off transactions. And so that's a nice feature of the system as well. It's been very popular. We have, talking a little bit more about Excel, we have the ability to import journal entries from Excel. And if you notice that I just have a quick link here called JE Import, and actually that opens an Excel file. And so I might have a file that maybe I do some calculations in, or accrue some bonuses, or maybe this comes from Paychecks or ADP or something and has my weekly payroll in it, whatever it might be. We have the ability to copy and paste this into Dynamics. And so if I have an entry in Excel, and this granted is a very simple one, I might be able to key it in as fast as I can copy it and paste it, but you'll kind of get the idea. So if I just do a traditional Windows copy there, and then I come over into my GP system, and I'm going to make a journal entry. And so I don't have a shortcut for this, so I'm doing it kind of one of the other navigation methods here. So there's my journal entry window, and you'll see kind of the dark bold fields. Those are required. So you'll notice as I go in and out of some of these windows that you see this bold. Those, you have to tell the software those things. So I might just put monthly entry of whatever, and once I have my required fields filled in, then I can just click the Excel paste button, and the system then pastes that entry right into the window for me. So there you can see them together. And so, you know, if you have a big entry, nobody wants to type all that stuff. Everybody's got plenty of practice keyboarding and clicking the mouse. And so Microsoft tries to streamline this as much as humanly possible, and give us the tools that we need so that we're not spending any more time on the keyboard and mouse than is absolutely necessary. And so that's a nice feature as well. And so let's just get rid of that since it's a fictitious entry. The last couple of things here are allocations. And so we do have the ability to do two different types of allocations. One is a fixed allocation. That means it's fixed. We're going to allocate the same percent to different departments or divisions or companies or whatever we might want this to be. And so I'm doing my rent expense, and I'm allocating that based on these fixed percentages to these different divisions. And so I'm kind of using this first segmented in my chart of accounts as the department or division. And so I've got 6 of those, and it's fixed because until I come in and change these percentages, the system is going to allocate my rent every month. When I post my rent invoice and payment, it's going to allocate those out to the other departments or divisions. And so fixed, very simple, it stays fixed until we go in and change it. The other type of allocation is variable, and I'm doing utilities on a variable allocation. Now, the left side of the screen here looks the same. I'm still using the same divisions or departments in my general ledger, but how am I allocating? You don't see the percentages because it's variable, and when I highlight Division 100 here, it's variable based on something else. In other words, it varies. It's not 5% every month to Division 100. I want to look at some other data element to decide how much to put into this GL account of my utility cost. And so, well, what is this allocation account? We call it a breakdown account. So if I highlight that and open it up, you'll see that in this case, I'm looking at square footage. And so I want to allocate utilities based on the amount of square footage that this department is consuming for the month. Now, that's maybe a little bit of an exaggeration. Most departments don't, increase or decrease their square footage every month, but they could. And so let's see what else I have. I've set up a number of what we call unit accounts, and it could be things like number of computers or number of telephones. You'll see, let me sort this by description. You'll see head count, so that's a pretty popular one. How many people are in the department? We did something a while back for an amusement park, and they sold armbands, and so we would capture the daily armbands that they sold and then allocate things based on armbands, the number of armbands sold. So really no limit here, just your imagination, but the unit accounts in the software allow us to track things that are not dollars and cents, not debits and credits. And so you see that I make entries into the unit accounts. So here's my square footage for April, period 4. And of course I can scroll through this. Let me change this by description so it stays in the square footage. And so there's my square footage for Division 500. I had 36, not a very big department. Probably this would be better for head count. You know, and it doesn't have to be, it's 29,000 feet. If I just say 29 and that's assumed to be 29,000, as long as I keep all of them 2 digits, then I still get the same math to happen. So the idea again is we do have a spot we can put non-financial data. All of these unit accounts can be pulled on to our financial statements. And so if we want to pull this onto our P&L and do some slicing and dicing, we can do that as well. Okay, so to-do area, kind of we get the software to tell us what's happening under the hood. My business analyzer kind of charts and graphs and key performance indicators that are available both in the system and on my iPhone, Android phone through a browser. Reports and quick links are those things that I work on and reports that I run on a regular basis. And let's talk for a few minutes about the bottom part of my page here. The time management is really designed for an employee to log in and enter their time, or maybe their request for time off. And so this is good if you use Payroll. If you don't use Payroll, then this probably doesn't have too much value. But there is a very, very, very small, inexpensive license for employees to actually log in, and all they would see is just their time piece there. They wouldn't really see or have access to anything else. And so we could extend this out to employees for capturing time. If we're using the project accounting, then the same idea, we can capture time and expenses into projects. And so again, the employee could log in and enter time into a project. You'll see I've got a timesheet kind of started down here, and it tells me I got one timesheet going, and this would be my time. The very bottom down here, I do have Power BI turned on. So some of you may or may not know about Microsoft Power BI, but that is kind of the latest and greatest reporting tool that Microsoft has built. It has 2 price levels. The cheapest is free, and that's what a lot of people play around with and kind of get started. And you can just go to the website, you know, Microsoft Power BI, just search that in any internet search engine, it'll pop right up. And you can go and kind of take a look and see what Power BI is all about. The beauty of that is there's a hook into Dynamics GP for Power BI. And so I have made some simple dashboards. Again, this is yet another tool that we have access to, and this might be kind of small coming through the meeting here, but this is my customer profit, and I spent probably 5 minutes on this. It's not very pretty, it's kind of just raw data, but here I can see the customers, and the idea was I wanted to pull out invoices and maybe orders and look at the selling price versus my cost. And I probably should have taken 5 more minutes and put a calculation out here to figure out what the difference was, so I could actually see the profit number, and then maybe the percentage would have been nice to finish this out with. But in just a few minutes, I created this in Power BI and then hooked that into my Dynamics GP. And I think I've got one for vendors out here as well. And so this actually has to go out to the Microsoft Cloud and get that data, because that's where it's stored. It's not stored in my GP system. This is just a hook out to Microsoft's Power BI site. And so it does take a couple of seconds, depending on your internet connection and so forth, to go retrieve that. But I will open the Power BI desktop here so you can kind of see, well, that's thinking. And well, I told you there's 2 price levels, and I gave you the cheapest one, which is free. If you want to do some other things that might take the paid version is $9.99 a month for each user that will create reports. And so here's my Power BI, if I can get it to fit to my desktop there. And so looks like a typical Microsoft tool. I'm using the free version, so I'm not paying anything to do what I'm doing here. But I'll show you in Power BI the same chart. So there's my customer profit, and this is really where Power BI is running, is in the Microsoft Cloud. And of course, it has a hook back into my Dynamics GP data. And so you'll see the little wheel there had to spin for a few seconds because it had to come from the Microsoft Data Center back down to my laptop and find my database and make sure security was available and go get the current information that's in my system. And so inside of Power BI, I can make this a little bit larger. And so you see the same report here in the dashboard running from the cloud is what you did on my screen. And so the vendor payment one that I created is very similar, but instead of looking at customers, I'm looking at vendors. And that's opening on my other screen here for some reason. And so there's my vendor list as well. And again, it was just how much I'd paid them and number of invoices. And so, you know, again, I spent 10 minutes on creating both of those. Here's everything in the database. Keep in mind, security model is in play here. So nobody's going to be able to attach into the data without the right security. And so I've pulled these things, these values out of the database. And that's what I get on the chart here. And so pretty simple to do. Microsoft has built, and these won't display, but they've built about 3 dozen charts and graphs for you to have for free, and in sales, inventory, purchasing, financial, and these are actually hooked to the sample database. And I ran out of time when I was doing my 2, so I don't have theirs completely hooked, but you see some of the features that are available here, the mapping and some of the more sophisticated things. If we wanted to look at sales by territory or sales by region, and we could restrict this to North America or really just, you know, the state of Illinois if I wanted to, and forget about the rest of the globe type thing. And so there's lots of free stuff out there. And again, this is the free version of Power BI. And so if you're just going to be the only user, then free works. If you want to publish this for other people to use, then you'd have to have the $10 a month package. Okay, last area here on my home page is the requisition area, and so this is part of where we get into workflow and so forth. And so you'll see I've got a number of requisitions in the system. I'm just going to go enter a requisition, and so now think about maybe again a very light user that needs to enter some type of requisition. You'll see the only requirements are the requisition number, which Dynamics assigns, and the date. And so in fact, I think, yes, I have started one, so you won't have to watch me key that in. And so there we go. And so here, well, I said I started one. I thought I had one that was already built out, but I guess I didn't finish it. That's fine. So we'll just put a few things here. So, you know, you can imagine a user not knowing some of this, and that's fine. They put in what they know, and we'll just say office supplies. Looks like I've used that one before. And we'll say, whoops, I'm gonna order maybe 2 of whatever that is, and see attached list, and $29 for both of those. And I want them here at our main warehouse. Now, I may or may not know the vendor. In this case, I'll put a vendor in, but the user that initiates the requisition may not know who that is. And so, and then I can attach a list. So I said, see attached. I can use the document attach feature, and I can either scan directly into this window, which I don't have a scanner today, so that's grayed out, or I can go out and get something off of, let's see here, we'll just get any old thing here. I could grab something that maybe I already scanned, and of course that allows me to open that up and preview that inside of Dynamics GP. And so we'll attach that, and then I submit that to the workflow as we discussed. We'll say for my explanation here, that's not required, but kind of gives the user who's going to approve this some information. The approvals are generally done through email and not done inside of the software, since most people that would approve would not be Dynamics GP users. And so here I see now, when I bring up requisition number 12, that this has been sent out and it's pending approval from whoever the person is that gets my requisitions. And we could have 30, 40, 50, 100 different steps in this. It can be as complex or as simple as what we need. I have it coming back to myself because I'm the only one here to approve it. And so, and I've given myself a couple hours here. And if it doesn't get approved, then it's going to reject. And so now, if I refresh my home page, and let's do that right here, I will get a workflow task. So now you'll have to assume that I'm the approver, and I'll get a workflow task here saying, hey, you've got something to approve. Now, that's just coincidentally because I'm a Dynamics GP user. 99% of the time, the users are not in the software, and so this would go out to through email, and the approver would see this in their inbox as an email message, and that's typically how the approvals are done. But to kind of simulate that, I'm my own approver here. I can come in and take a look at this, and if I like it, I can say, let's approve it. I could, of course, reject it, or I might send this on to someone else. And so I'll just put approve there in the box. And again, comments not required, but we'll humor it here. And so once I go back then to that requisition, I can view the history of all the different people that handled this. So I might have had 10 or 15 different people in the approval chain based on GL account or dollar amount or vendor or location, or really anything that we're capturing can be used to trigger approvals. And so mine was simple. This user submitted it. Well, that was me. And coincidentally, I actually was the approver. And so we've got the date and time stamps there on when this traveled through the hierarchy and when people approved it. Well, so this is approved. Now I'm going to actually buy that. And so I come up under actions and I can purchase it, and the system knows the vendor because someone put that in already. I might have had to do that as the approver, but the initiator suggested the vendor. We could have changed that along the way, but here we know that we're going to buy for requisition 12. I can see other POs out there for this vendor. I could come in and change the shipping method or the PO date. I could add items to the PO. I could change the quantity. Of course, changing something that's approved is going to re-trigger the approval. So if I come in and say, well, I'm going to bump that up to 40 because I need 20 at home type thing, well, that's going to stop me and force this back through the approval process. And so from there, I can generate the purchase order. And I don't normally run this report, but I'm going to get the PO number that it generated here. And so, it's doing a little thinking. And so it created PO 2083. And so it takes me to a view of all the POs that are out there waiting on me. Well, there's just one. And so, we could send that out in email. We could print that purchase order. We can double click on it and open it up and take a look. And maybe we need to add some other things to it since we're doing one for this vendor, whatever it might be. And so the idea is, we generally email that out to the vendor, and then away it goes, and we wait for that to come back in. So let's see, let's navigate back, not to my home page, but maybe over to one of the other pages. So I'm kind of leaving my home page now in the last couple of minutes here, just going over to, in this case, the sales page. And here, if I don't have shortcuts on my home page, I can go gather up data or look at data or enter data. Here's my customer database. And of course, you know, I can sort any of this by ID or by name. I'm kind of cheating a little bit and using alphanumeric, so my customer ID and my customer name are very, very close. But if I was looking to see what customers, somebody that started with a W, well, the more I type here, the closer I get. And so I'm never really keying stuff. I'm really just picking from a list. It's the days of, you know, keying this in once it's in the system, of course. The days of keying this in hopefully are long gone. So typical master record screen here, lots of information we can collect. You'll see the only requirement is the actual customer ID, but of course address information and so on are generally going to be helpful. I can email customer documents out in a lot of different forms, so orders, quotes, invoices, returns, back orders, statements, and so on, can go out in PDF format, in protected Word, protected meaning it can't be edited, XPS, which is kind of the Microsoft version of a PDF, and in HTML, if we really don't know what's on the other end, we just want to do it so it opens kind of in browser format, we could do that as well. And so lots of email choices and different types of formatting there available for us. The one thing I wanted to show in here is, well, two things really. We can get to the letters. So if we need to do something with the customer, we don't have to go to the letter page. We can write a letter to the customer right from the screen here. We could print a statement. So maybe we're on the phone with this customer and we're having trouble reconciling their account. We can print a statement right to the screen and send that out to them in email in just a few clicks and make sure they got it right while we're on the phone. The last piece is this all-in-one view where Dynamics GP really pulls everything there is with that customer and brings it into one kind of holistic view of customer activity. So things like quotes, orders, invoices, payments from the customer, if there's credits or returns. So the blue, that means we can drill down, so we can drill back into where that transaction was entered. So if we wanted to go look at this order, we could drill down on that. We could actually print that order or email that order if we wanted to, even though that might have already been invoiced. But the real power of this window is seeing what's tied together. So here I got a bunch of invoices and a bunch of payments. Well, what payment paid which invoice type thing? So if I just check off this particular payment, that shows the invoice or invoices that was paid on that particular check from the customer and any orders that might have created the invoice. So here we see this order eventually got rolled to this invoice and ultimately was paid on this check from the customer. And so it's very easy to see without going to file cabinets and digging through a bunch of paper and notes and all that stuff. That's old school and really not necessary anymore. So with that, Caitlin, let's see if there's any questions in the last 5 minutes here. There's lots and lots and lots more stuff, but hopefully that gave everyone a kind of a quick overview of what Dynamics GP is about.
Yes, we had a couple questions. So the first one is, can GP 2018 handle multiple companies?
That's a good question. It has unlimited companies. And so you'll see I have one other company set up here. But yeah, there's no limit on how many companies you can set up.
Okay, and then the next question is, can you download an invoice copy to the Payables module?
Yeah, so assuming you're gonna key in a vendor transaction, so a payable, and so here's my AP entry screen. I should have one out there. Yeah, so the same idea here. If I wanted to scan the vendor's invoice directly into the transaction, I could do that if I had a scanner. Or if I had it out, maybe it came in an email and the vendor sent it to me in PDF, so I just save it somewhere. I can go out and grab that PDF and attach that right in to the transaction here. And that's a permanent copy. If that original got deleted, that's okay. We're actually putting a copy inside of the Dynamics GP database.
Okay, I was gonna say it looks like those are the 2 questions that we had this session. So, okay, I will like to thank you all again for attending our presentation today. And if you do have any other later questions that do come up, please feel free to reach out to Bryan or I. I will be sending a follow-up email this afternoon with a link to the recording. And thank you, Bryan, for this great overview of Dynamics GP 2018.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and let us know if you have questions. Thanks, Caitlin.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Bye.